here. So in today's video I wanted to show you my favorite garden books, and I have a pretty decent garden book collection that kind of keeps expanding because they're all wonderful books, but there are certain books in my library that I keep going back to over and over again because they have just such a wealth of information that I think even an experienced gardener like I am can learn something new every time I open them. So in today's video I selected 5 books about plants. And I think as gardeners we kind of start with learning about plants first rather than about garden design or garden maintenance, because it's the plants that draw us into the garden first. So I selected 5 really good garden plant books that are great whether you are a beginner gardener or maybe experienced gardener. So the first book that I have here is the Plant Care Manual, and I love this book. In the first 2 pages it has the USDA hardiness zone, so if you know your hardiness zone and you're looking up a plant, you know whether you can grow it or not. It is full of beautiful botanical illustrations and photographs. So let's say you have a plant in your garden that you cannot ID, maybe you will stumble upon it in this book and can recognize it. It has detailed instructions on the care of the plant, what it needs, what characteristics, different species, different cultivars, the heights, the zones, all the information that you'll ever need for your plant. It has over 300 plants in here, so it's a pretty decent selection. It has trees, shrubs, perennials, bulbs, and rock garden plants. Also, it has beautiful pruning technique illustrations. And a lot of times we kind of get lost in the weeds, so to speak, about how to prune your shrubs and trees. So clear illustrations a lot of times are really helpful. And so like for example, you get a clematis, and there's a clematis type 1, type 2, type 3, and in this book it will clearly explain to you what you need to cut on all these different types of clematis and what you have to leave alone. Overall, just really enjoy this book. It is very colorful, and a lot of times when I'm designing a garden, I can just go through it and see the structure of the plant, the dominant colors of the plant, and see if it goes with another plant that I have in the garden bed. So the second book that I have here is The Flower Expert, and don't worry, there's nothing wrong with your vision. It is in Russian, and the reason being is that this is the very first garden book that I've ever had. And this book is just incredible. It is packed with information, but yet concise. It has beautiful botanical illustrations and photographs. It has some information about propagation or how to start a garden. And for every individual plant, you can look up different species, different cultivars, different sizes that they grow into, their care. And this book was probably the reason why I went into landscape design and gardening, and why I love it so much. I was so impressed with the colorful illustrations that every time I would look into this book, the Latin names kind of stuck in my brain, and that's how I learned a lot of Latin names for plants. So when I moved to United States, if I were to go to the nursery, obviously I did not know any English names at the time, but I could recognize the Latin names, and it was kind of like this unifying element. But the expert books are incredibly popular, and I think there were like 50 million copies sold over time. And pretty much any topic that you can think of in the garden, whether it is about lawn, water gardens, rock gardens, bulbs, vegetable gardens, or houseplant, there is an expert book for that. And I go back to this book to this very day and look up plants and learn something new in this book every time. This book is a bit old. I don't want to call it outdated. let's say, old. So, and it's also British. So it does not have the United States USDA zones. So if you see a plant that you like in this book, you can just look up the USDA zone online. Third book that I have on my list is the Dream Plants for the Natural Garden. And if you have been watching my channel, you guys know that my garden style is very much about incorporating natural plants, native plants in my designs, and as well as some like an old timers, kind of like the English garden plants. But there are very few books that I could find that have detailed descriptions of natural plants that look beautiful all year round. So this book is co-authored by Piet Odolph, who is an absolute superstar and has designed a lot of natural gardens over the last couple of decades, including the High Line in New York City. So right here where I've been a number of times, and it is just an amazing, amazing space. So this book has over 1,200 detailed descriptions of natural looking plants. And the natural looking plant description, you know, they kind of go into what natural means in the beginning of this book. And this book is actually quite humorous, the way they describe plants and how they work in the garden. I love the fact that they describe plants that are super tough in the garden, that are not bullies or not going to invade their neighbors, they're not going to seed all over, and they're also describing the plants that are troublesome, that can become invasive, and also the ones that completely fail the test. They may be beautiful, but they just cannot be sustainable in a beautiful garden. It has gorgeous photographs of different natural plants and very precise descriptions of their characteristics, like height, what they need, their requirements, and also zones, which is great. So I highly, highly recommend this if you are starting to design a garden that is more relaxed and more natural looking. You will for sure find a plant for you here. So the last book that I have here is Planthropology, and I'm almost kind of nervous describing it because I'm afraid I'm not going to do it justice. So the previous books that I showed you today were mostly for reference. They're something that you don't have to read from page 1 to the last page. You can look at them now and then if you have to look up a plant or maybe their care or identification. But this book, you have to read from page 1 to the last page. It is so amazing and is so rich with information about plants on like a whole different level. Like for example, how did people discover plants? How did they transfer them from tropical areas to temperate zones on ships? What about plant toxicity? Are there plants that are so deadly you can die just from touching them? Or what about hybridizing plants? What about plant geometry and different structure of their flowers? And then there's describing of how plants kind of evoke all these different senses in humans, not just smell or touch. It's just so amazing. Every time I turn page in this book, I just didn't know what to expect. I learned so much new information, and if you have a person in your life who really, really loves plants, or if you really, really love plants and want to know more, I highly recommend this book. And this plant interest and plant love comes from the author, who is Ken Drews, who is a great garden writer. And the book is so rich with garden photographs, and they are such an amazing quality. It's such a treat to have this book in my life. It's amazing and definitely worth putting on your Christmas list. All right, guys, this is it for today. I hope you enjoyed this book review. I'm actually considering doing maybe another one because there's so many topics about gardens and there's so many books about gardens. And as the winter approaches, I think there's no better way than to curl up on the couch and read about plants and gardens. So let me know if you want to see another video like that. Also, all of these books, or most of these books, you can just buy on Amazon for $3, or I don't know, like a nominal, really low price. And check your local library because sometimes these books are available to check out in the library. Anyway, thank you so much, guys, for watching. Let me know if you have any questions, and I'll see you next time.